Lectures Committee of the Asiatic Society of Mumbai, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you this evening at the Durbar Hall after a hiatus of 2 years when the Dr. Kamerkar Endowment Lecture could only be held in the online mode. The 17th in this series of lectures will be delivered by Dr. Syed Nadeem Rezavi, Professor of History at the Aligarh Muslim University, on archival material of the Mughal period. He has done us the honor of accepting our invitation and has travelled all the way from Aligarh today to be with us this evening. Thank you, Professor Rezavi. Welcome to Mumbai and to the Durbar Hall. Dr. Radhika Seshan, also a professor of history, has come from Pune to preside at this important lecture. Thank you, Dr. Seshan, for accepting our invitation so readily and so eagerly. We are indeed happy and honored that you have done so. Before we go any further, and I hand over the proceedings to you, Dr. Seshan, kindly allow me to tell the audience briefly about this endowment and also about the speakers for today. So, Dr. Mrs. Mani Kamerkar, née Mani Vasunya, was born in 1925 into a well-established Parsi family. She did most of her schooling at St. Mary's School in Pune and subsequently joined college in Bombay in 1942, graduating in history and politics from Elphinstone College. At that time, the freedom movement was in full swing. Women were often in the limelight. Mani got involved with political groups in the college and on many occasions attended public meetings of Gandhiji, Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel and others, soon becoming an ardent nationalist. She joined the Socialist Party and worked in the trade union movement, where she met her husband Padmakar Kamerkar, who happens to be my mama, and who later became an eminent labor lawyer working for social causes. After their marriage in 1950, Mani continued with her teaching work as University Professor of History, Modern South Asia, concentrating in particular on social history, especially dealing with Parsis. She later became the founder principal of the Maniben Nanavati Women's College from 1972 to 85 and director, College Development Council of the SNDT University from 1986 to 1990. She took up serious historical research and writing on Western India and has several publications in books and reputed journals to her credit. She was well known in history circles as an authority on the colonial period. Dr. Kamerkar joined the Asiatic Society of Mumbai in 1961 and rose to be a vice president in 1993. She had completed her PhD in 76 and was recognized as a PhD guide. Since 1981, she had been a trustee of Avehi, an audiovisual resource center disseminating material to schools and adult education centers. She was president of the Women Graduates Union, Bombay chapter of the Indian Federation of University Women for many years. She was actively involved with several leading societies in the field of historical studies, which included being chairperson India History and Culture Society in 1990. Dr. Kamerkar passed away in Mumbai in October 2004 at the age of 79 years. She is survived by her son Anant and her daughter Jyoti, both of whom are here today. Thank you, both of you, for being with us. In her will, she left a generous endowment for the Asiatic Society. It was a passion and commitment that was dear to her heart. An endowment lecture in her name has been held every year since 2007. The subject has to have a bearing on the history of India. The long list of publications, which I will not get into just now. And let me now tell you about our speaker for today, the eminent Dr. Syed Ali Nadeem Rezavi, who is a professor at Aligarh Muslim University. He was Charles Wallace Fellow in 2007 at SOAS, London, and visiting fellow Maison des Sciences de l'Homme in Paris, 2008. Since 2013, he is one of the visiting fellows of the Shia Institute in London. Between 2017 and 20, he was chairman and coordinator of the Center for Advanced Studies in History. He is also a former coordinator of the Muska Dakri University Museum at Aligarh Muslim University. At present, he is the president of the Aligarh Society of History and Archaeology, treasurer of Aligarh Historian Society, and an executive member of the Executive Committee of the Indian History Congress. He holds a PhD on the urban middle class in Mughal India from Aligarh Muslim University, and his research interests focus on the history and archaeology of medieval India and on the Mughal dynasty in particular. He is the author of Fatpur Sikri Revisited, Oxford 2013, and History Through Archaeology 2019. The second revised edition of Fatpur Sikri Revisited will be published shortly. He has contributed chapters to books including Religious Movements and Institutions in Medieval India, Oxford 2009, and Religion in Indian History 2007. He has authored more than 50 papers published in reputed journals. His forthcoming books, one on middle classes under the Mughals and another on medieval archaeology, has been accepted by Primus India to be published soon. As chairman of the Department of History, AMU, he also brought out a 2-volume catalogue of the archaeological holdings of the Department of History as a facsimile print of a 17th century Persian manuscript. Sorry for my pronunciation, but it's Taskira-e-Pir Hasutaili, if I'm not too wrong. Thank you. Thank you. No, I was coached by Radhika Seshan, who also has studied Persian just half an hour ago. Thank you. At AMU, where he teaches medieval Indian history, he introduced new postgraduate courses on medieval archaeology, a subject generally not taught elsewhere. Since 2020, he has been active in organizing online lectures, talks, and discussions on various aspects of Indian history, especially medieval India, which has been very well received the world over. Our chairperson today, Dr. Radhika Seshan, retired as professor and head of the Department of History, Savitribai Phule, Pune University, in August 2019. She is now visiting faculty, Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts in Pune. Her area of specialization is medieval Indian history, within which she has concentrated on economic history, especially maritime and urban history. She is the author of 3 books, Trade and Politics on the Coromandel Coast, Primus Books 2012, Ideas and Institutions in Medieval India, 8th to 18th Centuries, Orient Black Swan 2013, and The Constructions of the East and Western Travel Narratives, 1300 to 1800, Rutledge 2020. In addition, she is the editor, joint editor of 10 books of Indian Ocean Histories, The Many Worlds of Michael Naylor Pearson, jointly edited with Reela Mukherjee, Rutledge, 2019-20. Shankar Goyal, Marching with History, a felicitation volume, 2021, and most recently, Wage Earners in India, 1500 to 1900, Regional Approaches in an International Context, jointly edited with Jan Lucassen Sage, 2021. She has numerous research papers to her credit in national and international journals. So thank you, Radhika, and I now invite you to kindly take your place at the podium. Professor Rezavi, Radhika Seshan, welcome.
Good evening, and I would first of all like to thank Meenal and the Asiatic Society for inviting me to preside over this extremely important endowment lecture, and even more for the additional pleasure of chairing a session where my old friend, Professor Rezavi, is going to be presenting his area. I won't say much about what he is going to be talking about, except to say that archival material is something that very few people talk about, and many more people need to talk about. So it is an area which is very little known, needs to be talked about, understood, and researched much more. I can't think of a better person than Professor Rezavi to give an audience of both specialists and non-specialists an introduction to this area of research. I will not carry on for very long. I'm sure it is much better that I hand it over. I now request Professor Rezavi to please take over. I will sit over there so that I can see the screen.
No, it's all right. Fine. Good evening, friends. First of all, I really feel honored to have been invited here, where I find such an audience who is so enthusiastic to hear on something which is related with history. I say I am honored because we are living in times where more than history, it is myths which are being circulated, understood, and talked about. One of the reasons why I chose this particular topic. But before I actually go to that, I'm sorry, I don't know the names of each and every one of you involved in this august association and body, this Asiatic Society at the moment. I was expecting, in fact, a very dilapidated place. I was actually surprised to find how the things are being maintained here. So I'm actually very happy. But I'm so sorry that I might not be naming. Yes, I also come from a university which is around 200 years old. Let me first of all thank Dr. Meenal Shirsagar. It is she who actually, officially wrote to me, but before she wrote to me, it was Dr. Usha Vijayalakshmi, who had been an old friend during the period when both of us were quite young, and we used to visit Indian History Congress. But at the time when she started communicating with me, I was not at all sure that it is the same person whom years ago I had met during the sessions of the Indian History Congress. But my contact with Usha ji was because of one particular painting which is housed in your collection, and perhaps I should thank it that it was due to that I came into contact with Asiatic Society Mumbai, and the Asiatic Society Mumbai came into contact with me. I would also thank yet another person. Perhaps I don't recognize, but because that name was again and again mentioned in the emails, because that person Miss Sirdesh Pandey helped me in getting my accommodation, so I am really quite thankful to her. And of course, the president of this August gathering, whom I had the good opportunity to meet only half an hour back. I am really very, very thankful to all of you. The Asiatic Society where I am, as has already been referred, is quite old, more than 200 years old. It has very rare documents, books, manuscripts, maps, which perhaps go more than 2 centuries old, because the particular painting which I would be showing you here belongs to 16th century, and it is housed in Asiatic Society here in this very building itself. Then, of course, you have not only the old texts which are here, but we also have a lot of Persian sources, manuscripts also. One of them which has been referred again and again is Rumi's, Masnavi, which is 13th century and is housed in your collection. I chose this topic when I was invited to such a place. I was not very sure what type of gathering I would be facing, whether I would be facing historians in general, or would there be more people who are generally aware of history and other matters. So I thought that I would be speaking on a topic, archival material of the Mughal period and introduction, where I will not be talking about the contents, actually what is given in the sources. I would also not be referring to any new document which I might have discovered during the last 30, 40 years that I have been working. No, I'm not going to bore you with all that material here at all. Because if you want to know about the type of documents, the nature of the documents, the contents of the documents, I can refer to you any number of names of real scholars who have actually worked on them. Now that I am in Mumbai, I will refer only to some of the scholars who worked on Marathi documents. Who can forget the works of Professor A.R. Kulkarni? I mean, most of his works, as soon as I was invited here, I was reminded of this name, big banner name among Indian historians, A.R. Kulkarni. And then another very senior historian who has passed away in the last, I think, 2 years, within last 2 years, Professor G.T. Kulkarni. I can never forget G.T. Saab, the way he would guide us young scholars during the various sessions of the Indian History Congress, because he would tell us how to look at the documentary evidences. And he had the, Marathi documents in Persian, especially in the Persian documents of this region, on his fingertips. Although only one of his books is quite famous, Mughal-Maratha Relations, but I can tell you that he has any number of papers, some published, some which are yet to be published, remarkable papers, written on the documentary sources themselves. I would also refer to a non-Marathi scholar, but who had been working on the archival material. Very recently, 2 weeks back, he passed away, Dr. Zakir Hussain. Some time back, his book, Medieval India, Studies in Polity, Economy and Society was published. So if any one of you are interested to have a look how to deal with documents, especially the Persian documents of medieval India, I would recommend you please go and look at this book. It is easily available on Amazon. Uh, in the recent months, Taj Mahal was brought under discussion, whether it is a temple or a tomb. Instead of going into the nitty-gritties of the whole argument, there is one chapter in this book which gives around a dozen Persian documents, letters, farmans, exchanged between the Amer ruler and the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. Read them, everything would be clear to you what this particular building is. Archival material is something which is quite different from chronicles of history. When chronicles are written, when Akbarnama is written, or when Babur himself writes his own autobiography, there are biases. They would be biased by their very nature. If I start writing about myself, you can expect what I would be writing about. I think, give me a chance to stand here and talk about myself. She introduced me in 5 minutes, I'll go on for half an hour. This is it. If you talk about the chronicles, they were sponsored by the same people. So, how could Abul Fazl, who was getting paid by Akbar, not praise him? Whenever Akbar would have any epileptic, whatever, he would fall down, he would say, he's in communication with God. Instead of claiming that he is ill, a man who should be on his bed. So, the chronicles and the official sources are something which are biased. And anyone writing history on the basis of them, you can accuse him or her as writing a biased history. But as far as the archival material in the form of documents and those sources which I am going to refer in today's lecture are concerned, they are all unconscious efforts. They contain information which were meant for that particular moment of time. They were not meant for people who would be born 500 years or 1000 years after that particular archival material, that document had been prepared, to judge the persons living during that period. So they are much more faithful. So one thing which you should be very clear, all of us should be very clear, is that archival materials are something which today, in this age, when every aspect of history is suspect, we should pay attention to that. Next slide, please. Naturally, in this slide, your building is missing. But what I am trying to say here is that if you actually want to look at unbiased past, you have to visit any of these repositories where you would get your material. Whether it is the British Library or Bibliothèque Nationale, whether it is the National Archives of Delhi, or a place like where we are sitting today, or any other archival resource which is there in any of the museums and places of Kolkata, that is the place where you would have to go and then discover those sources. They would not be on sale with published by primers or written or available on the Amazon. If you want to read about what happened in history, it is these places which one have to visit. Next one, please. When we deal with medieval India, the greatest problem which each of us face is the fact that most of the primary documents of that period or source material of that period, starting from 12th, 13th centuries onwards up till 19th century, are basically in a language which today people generally don't understand. Persian. And Persian language also is of two types. One, the modern Persian, which today is being spoken, written in Iran, or is being taught in the so-called Persian departments in all the universities throughout India. That Persian is modern Persian, which has developed under European influence, especially the French influence. The Persian which you would encounter if you are going to read the medieval sources is the classical Persian. A Persian which has much, influence of Arabic. And there are many words which today's modern Persian scholars sitting in Iran would not be able to understand. That classical Persian is very different. I am telling you this because when I was doing my research on urban middle classes and I had to deal with the manuscripts of that particular period, I had to run from scholar to scholar, from Delhi to Aligarh to Banaras to Allahabad, hunting for people who could decipher what is written. There were two problems. One, the language itself, as I said, that the entire language is different. Secondly, the script. Most of the documents which were composed, compiled, prepared during the medieval period were written, composed, compiled in a variety of scripts. For example, there are certain of these scripts before you. It's only one, sentence which is written there. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But you can see that in each, it's written in a different manner. So one of the first issues, problems, which arises when a person starts dealing with Persian documents of that period is the script itself. Next one. On top of that, most of the scribes of the medieval period, especially so 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, they had developed a script which was known as Khatt-e-Shikast. Perhaps you might have heard about the script of the Modis, the Banyas. They have a shorthand for writing down their things. In various places, in various terms have been used for that. Now, the scribes of the medieval period who actually made those documents, whether they are the revenue documents, whether they are the texts, they wrote in shorthand, Khatt-e-Shikast. I am quite sure that even if there are a number of people who are Persian scholars sitting here, half of them would not be able to read it, what is written. You have to develop special skills to understand what is written. So it is very easy for someone to claim that in such source, this thing appears. And they would also print a photograph of that in the newspaper and you go and decipher it whether they are correct or not. So that is also one of the problems. Next one. Apart from that, not only the letters, but also the numerals. Even they had, a different way of writing the numerals. It is very easy. If I have written 1, some other scribe may come and add one more 1 to it. It would become 11. Or someone would add a dot to it, it would become 110. So what you do is that instead of writing it in numeral forms, you start writing it in a formulaic way. Now, for example, you can see it from 1 to 1 lakh. These are the various, numeric forms which were developed by the scribes of the medieval period when they are discussing about the ranks and mansabs and tax collections and how much to collect, how much to pay. So, to ensure that no wrong is being done, this is the type of the script. So, if you have to read the document, it's not only those various scripts, Khatte Kufi or Shikast or, Nastaliq or Taliq or there are 15 or 16 which Abul Fazl mentions. So, you have to know all of them in order to understand what's being written. On top of that, if there are, revenue documents, you have to also learn this type of scripts. So, this is another aspect which I wanted to discuss with you. Next one. Now, as far as, I am giving you all this because in the recent few years, newspaper after newspapers and, social media, they keep on reproducing certain photographs of, yellowed, faded documents written in Persian, claiming here is the Mughal Farman of Aurangzeb, claiming that such and such temple should be broken, or such and such person has to be executed, so on and so forth. And here is a photo in Bikaner archives. They would say that it is a farman. Most of the people who do not understand how the documents are, they actually fall victim. They say, here is a photo. It's a document, Persian. There is you see, the name of Aurangzeb is also written there. So it is his farman. And that is why I just wanted to present before the audience here that one should be aware about the various categories which were prepared and how to, actually understand which document is what. There are a number of types of documents: private epistles, royal edicts, public documents. Public documents are also of a number of kinds. Next one. For example, take the royal edicts themselves. Who has not heard about the Farman? Then there is a document known as Fathnama. Might not have heard this third one, Rams or Ishara. It is also issued in by the emperor, but it is in the form of notes, points, which were dictated by the king, by the munshi. It is actually not the wordings of the emperor. This is what the munshi understood that the emperor wanted him to write. Then you have kalimat, notes on public affairs, later to be expanded into official orders. We know that how sometimes we write in brief, then ultimately when the final document is prepared, it might be just the opposite of what had been noted at that particular moment of time. Manshur, a royal mandate addressed to a person, a call-nama and so on and so forth. Right, next one. Farmans can also be, Farman is an edict which is issued by the king himself, under his own seal. But even the Farman can be of various natures. Various kinds of Farmans could be there. Next one. Now, how to recognize that a particular document is a Farman or not? One of the basic things to understand that actually that particular thing which is being claimed to have been written on the direct orders of the king is that there should be a sarnama, a beginning, which is given in red. There are certain incantations which are written there. And then the imperial seal, which is to be affixed. Remember that the imperial seal is not lying in somebody's office. What happens today? If you may be the director, where is your seal? your seal is in the office, and if your clerk or the Bade Babu is a corrupt person, he might apply to any document and issue it in your name. No. The royal seal of an emperor would also not be with the emperor himself, because at one moment he's got absolute powers. So he might be angry with you and ask that off with your head. But after 2 hours, he might repent, may not be actually ready. So what is done is that whenever he gives an order, that is recorded, all right. But after some time has passed, then the document is once again presented to him. Are you sure that this is the order which you have to give? Even if he says yes, that royal order which has been dictated by the king himself would not be a farman until it carries the seal, and the seal is with a third person. For example, with Noor Jahan or with Mumtaz Mahal, a confidant of the emperor who would argue out with the man. You should issue it or not issue it. So it is only after much deliberation, months of deliberation, that a farman would be issued. And it would be complete only if you have, on that side you can see the Sarnama in the red and the royal seal. Now it is the official order. If anything else is written in his name and that document misses these two things, it is not a farman at all. It is something which is being attributed to king and not a farman. Sometimes, to make it doubly sure, another thing was added. You know that during that time, they didn't know about the fingerprints. So fingerprints were not there. But the panja was there. The royal hand, dipped in the ink, that would be put there as a symbol that don't doubt it anymore. It is the royal order. Next one. And we have a number of documents with panja. Very crucially important documents are always with panja. Now, there are two documents which are there. Both of them are called farmans. The one which is the colored photograph is the original. And the other one is a naql, a copy. Now, how can you make out that that is original just because that it is given in color? No. Number two, both those things which I said, the Sarnama and the seal, are there in the royal edict, the actual edict. Right? Number two, pay attention. The first 2 lines of the document, they are half lines. They are half lines. It was always a case that in the royal farman, the 2 starting lines would be starting from the middle. They would not be full lines. If it's a naql, just the usual way of writing it. Now, whether that has been copied faithfully or not, you can always doubt a naql. But if it's a farman with seal, then it should also be a farman. Sometimes, for example, in Vrindavan, or there are many places where people start claiming that emperor gave us land. He issued us our land grant. And they did not know the tradition of that period. So they would copy the Persian. They would also have that old paper with them. But they would not be knowing 2 things. One, the spelling which was prevalent during that period of time and how it was written. So we have a number of documents, for example, at Mathura, which mention Mathura as Mathura. Mathura in Persian, Mim, Te, He, Re, Alif, Mathura. This is a modern pronunciation and a modern name. During the Mughal period, the Mughal documents, if prepared during the 17th century, would not be referring to Mathura as Mathura, they would be referring it as Matra. Mim, Te, Re, Alif. Matra, Matra. Or for example, if there is a document referring to Agra as Akbarabad and claiming that it was issued, say, during the period of Jahangir, you need not go further. Because the name Akbarabad was given to Agra only during the period of Shah Jahan, when Shah Jahanabad had been built. It was only then that the city came to be known as. Right? So, there are a number of documents. For example, Irfan Habib has tried to point. There are certain documents which were collected by our friend whom I had referred at the time when we had started this lecture. He had also reproduced certain documents, and Irfan Habib pointed out that perhaps this document is spurious based on these facts. Now, if we can't make a distinction what is spurious and what is not, then we would be having misleading information and we would be creating more myths than proper histories. Next one. Now, as I said, that particular style of half line, the first two lines being half, and with the seal, this is one of the earliest documents issued by the Mughals. This is a document issued under the signature of Babur in 1528, after the Battle of Khanwa, which was fought between Rana Sangram Singh and Babur. So there is the seal of Babur, the dates which are given, which tallies with 1527. You can read what is given there. The Tankai Siyah. Why? Because he is taking over after the Lodhis. And we know that Behlul Lodhi had come up with a new type of a tanka, which was just like the period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, was not of silver but of copper, and that is why it was known as either Tankai Behloli or Tankai Siya. So a person whom these people had defeated, they were not going to refer his name, so they always call it as Tankai Siya, a term which now we do not use. So whether it is the terminology or the style and the seal, which starting from Babur till the end of the Mughal period remains static. Next one. You can have a look at this seal. And then also I want to point out, as I said, that no farman, which is every one of us know that the king has the absolute authority as far as the Mughals are concerned. But even Akbar or Babur or Aurangzeb was not Narendra Modi ji. They had someone else sitting on top of them. Sheikh Zain, the Sadr Sudur, unless that document was also endorsed by the Sadr of that period, it would not be considered authentic. And all these authentications, endorsements would be given on the back side of the document. So if you want to look at the authenticity of whether it's actually a farman, you pay attention to the first page, how it is being written, what language, what script, and then you still are not sure whether it actually ended up being implemented or not. For that, you just turn it over. On the back side, there would be a number of endorsements led by the Sadr of that period, the Sadr Sudur. So, this is the first example I am giving you from the period of Babur himself. Next one. And when it is a person who is not a king, but a prince, say for example Aurangzeb, when he was not the king, or for that matter Salim, when he is aspiring to be the king but not the king, or even otherwise when they are not in rebellion, but even otherwise if is a prince issuing an order, it would be known as Nishan. Now look at the Nishan. There are seals, But look at the document itself. I mean, you may not be able to read what's written out there, but you can be very sure that this document is very different from the documents which I had shown you. It's not a farman, because there is a typical way of writing a farman. It may have the seal of Aurangzeb, but perhaps if such a document has the seal of Aurangzeb, then it has been issued at a time when he was not the king. It is a nishan, not issued as the sovereign of the country. Next one. Not only the imperial authorities and nobles and princes are issuing documents, there are a large number of documents. I mean, I am coming back to the same point that Bikaner archives having a farman of Aurangzeb telling us 300 temples were broken on such and such date. You look at the type of the document. It is a muster roll. Muster roll. And you can read where all the details of the person are being recorded. If I have to get a salary, then I have to show my horses. I have to show my presents. My photographs naturally could not be taken during the 17th century or 18th century. Actually, the camera came into existence only from late 1880s, 1860s. Before that, perhaps there was no camera as far as India is concerned. So what do? You make notations. I'll give you one example. There was one very important noble of Shah Jahan, who was very haughty, who went to the clerk of that period to draw his salary. The clerk made him wait. And while he was waiting, he lost his temper. Sometimes you also do that. Arey yaar, main itna bada aadmi khada, I am standing here, you're not doing the work. He shouted at the scribe. The scribe looked at him, didn't say anything. He kept on shouting at him. The man made the salary, gave it to him. But after a few months, when he returned back, the same scribe, the same grandee of the Mughal Empire, Shah Jahan's period, and the grandee said, "Give me my pay." The scribe, a petty person, said, "Actually, the huliya, the description of yours, which is given in my register, in my documents, does not tally with your face. Because my register tells me that this noble," I am forgetting the name of that noble, "such and such noble doesn't have the front two teeth, and you have both of them." So we have the record that this grandee of the Mughal Empire had to get both his teeth broken and then go and collect his salary. The power of the scribe. So here in this document, the entire huliya of the person who is going to get the salary is being noted. What is his color, whether he has chechak ke daag or not, what is the shape of his nose, whether his eyes are straight or what. Every defect, even in our passport we have that, what type of sign do we have on our body. So that practice is given there in these documents, and we should be aware of these even Mughal documents which are being prepared has even such materials. Next one. And then of course there are Vakil reports. I mean, each and every noble or each and every prince has an agent sitting in the court. And the court has an agent which is there in the districts and in the provinces. I will give one example. Shah Jahan, the Jahangir, had a childhood friend whose name was Mukarrab Khan, who was also a physician. He would treat Jahangir. He was a very good physician. His father was also a physician. Jahangir and Mukarrab Khan, as children, had played together. Later on, when Muqarrab Khan became the grandee of the empire, he was appointed as governor of Gujarat. You know, Gujarat is a lucrative place from where the trade and commerce is taking place. So all type of riches which were bought from East India Company and everything were brought for Jahangir by Muqarrab Khan. He would decide what the emperor should get or what not to get. And after some time, he was transferred to Bihar. And by the time he was transferred to Bihar, Muqarrab Khan thought that he is as important as the king himself. So what he does is that one of the vakils of the emperor posted in Bihar write to the emperor without the knowledge of the governor that the governor had forcibly raped a Hindu woman. Muqarrab Khan denies. Jahangir cites that no, my agent has informed me that you have committed this crime, and he's demoted. First suspended, then demoted, then his governorship taken away. On the basis of what? On the basis of such reports which were written. You know, all of you must have heard, whether you are a student of medieval Indian history or not, about Rathore rebellion. That the Rathores rebelled against Aurangzeb. Jadunath Sarkar says that the reason for the Rathore rebellion was the religious persecution. The religious policies of Aurangzeb were such that ultimately the Rajputs, especially the Rathores, were forced to revolt. Now, there is a text which is known as, Waqai Ajmer, Waqayat Ajmer. Waqai are the news reports written by the Wakils, which are in Bikaner archives. And one copy is in Salarjung Museum. And according to this Wakil's report, the things were very different, and that is why I'm not going to teach you history. I'm just pointing out that Jadunath Sarkar during the 19th century pointed out the faulty religious policy of Aurangzeb responsible for the Rathore rebellion. But in late 1970s, when this particular source was discovered, first at Hyderabad, Salarjung Museum, M. Athar Ali, one of the very famous historians of Aligarh, wrote an article on the causes of the Rathore rebellion based on the information given by the Wakil. Now, this Wakil is only an agent. He has no agenda. He is not a Mughal historian. He is a non-Muslim sitting in the court, giving the report from the Rajput sides, sending it to the center, what has happened there. And what he is writing? He says that Rani Hardy has written a letter in which she wants that if you give me the tika, I am ready to get all the number of temples which you want to get destroyed, for example. So, I mean, the importance of these Wakil's reports, they are a corrective to the chronicles which are there. And we as students of the past should pay attention to the Wakil reports. And I would say that people like Professor Satish Chandra, S.P. Gupta, G.T. Kulkarni, A.R. Kulkarni, these are the peoples who actually base their writings on such documents. Next one, please. It is generally held, and it is almost held by everyone, that during the Mughal period or medieval period, there were no plans of any buildings which existed. Can you show me any plan of the Taj Mahal, how it was built? No plan. Can you show me the plan of the Agra fort or the Delhi fort or Etbat-ud-Dawla? No plan. If you go to the Ottoman Empire, you would find the plans of even small buildings. So it was generally held that the Mughal period, there were no planned drawers and there were no plans of actually the buildings. Why people said that? Because they were basing themselves on the chronicles of the 17th, 18th centuries, they were not looking at the right documents from where they would get the information. Such type of plans, we start getting inkling about them from the legal papers which survive. Hebanamas, Bainamas, Rehennamas, sale deeds, gift deeds, mortgage deals. Even today, all of us know that when we prepare a document of the house, certain dimensions of the house is given, certain plan of the house is given. So I am just starting with this here, that in the middle there is a square, no plan as such, just a square, boundary, east, west, north, south, and on all the sides a type of a description given, in the middle written khana, a house. In the sides what is written? The dimension of the khana which is there. So you can claim that, okay, there must have been certain drawings, but it is not actually a plan. Next one. This is again from the Mughal period. This document is, a hibanama, a gift deed issued by Santidas Johri, one of the very famous jewelers of the Mughal period, who was also a financer of the Mughals. He would finance the Mughal Empire. Santidas Johri. Perhaps Hodiwala is one of the persons who has done first work on these Johris and referred to Santidas. And later on, you have Ashanda Gupta and a large number of historians who have discovered and found that Santidas is one of the most important Gujarati merchants of that period, who had his own ships and was financing the state. He is gifting certain of his houses to his family members. Look at the document. It is there in, it's a long farman-like thing, long document, which I had to place it in 3 parts and look at the plan, actual plan of the houses which are made there. How many doors, how many rooms, where is the courtyard, where are the trees, what are the details, where is the well, all type of details. Next one. Another very important, missing link for anybody studying about the past. When you look at great Mughal monumental structures, say for example, the Taj, its dome. How were such massive pieces of stones lifted to so great heights?